to have some more audience. Can we wait for 5 more minutes to have some more audience, or can we start? Okay, good. Good afternoon. I hope I am audible enough to everyone. Excellent. Uh, those of you who are seeing me for the first time, I'm sure many of you attended previous session and Professor Khan introduced me, but if not, if you were not present there, my name is Dr. Engesh Anupam. I am based in Cardiff Metropolitan University as Head of Department for Data Science. Before moving to Cardiff Met, I was based in University of Sheffield, UK, where I did my study, my PhD, and then I eventually moved to Cardiff. But that's me in short. The reason I am here today is to it's a two-way session, as we have been doing pretty much every session in two ways. It's not about me coming here and presenting you set of slides and trying to inform you, but it's also about understanding what AI in education means to you in Mangalore University and maybe some other constituent colleges where you are working. Okay, so that's the whole intention of this kind of session. Now, while I'm saying that, shall we start with some some very easy question, because I know we all have heard about ChatGPT. Is there anyone who hasn't heard this term before, ChatGPT? Right? So we all know, right? How many students we have in this room? Can you raise your hand? Okay. Now, among the students, have you ever used ChatGPT to do your assignment? To write something, essay or anything which is required? You can be honest. No one is going to judge you. Okay, if you have, because I want to get some honest answer. Now, whether or not you have used ChatGPT, this session is not about ChatGPT. Okay, so it's not that I'm here trying to rephrase some of the content which you can find anyways on the YouTube about ChatGPT and to talk about the ethical usage of ChatGPT. This isn't exactly about ChatGPT. In fact, this session is more about a wider tools that comes within the purview of artificial intelligence, and ChatGPT is one of them. Okay, so that just to clarify that. In fact, it's more about how we can use artificial intelligence in responsible way in learning and teaching. Now, while this session has been titled as responsible uses in learning and teaching, I'm going to provide a few examples from some of the PhD projects that we are doing. So I think that makes sense, but before we go to that point, let's start with something very simple. And the simple thing is to first understand what are we going to cover in this session. So first we are going to start with benefits of artificial intelligence in education. And as I said, it's going to be a two-way communication. While I will be talking about some of the benefits which I think, or which we think as a team within Cardiff Met, I will be talking about those. But at the same time, I would be interested in knowing what you think is the benefit of artificial intelligence in education. Thereafter, we'll go and talk about some risks and some potential issues and the challenges which we might face while using artificial intelligence, because everything has got multiple faces. Even a coin has got two sides. So when we're talking about the benefits, it's also essential to understand, to critically review, to evaluate that what different consequences could be when we are using ChatGPT, artificial intelligence. See, I mean, ChatGPT has become so synonymous to artificial intelligence that people think it's everything. But anyways, my bad. Third one, I'll talk about at least 2 case studies from Cardiff Met, and that is something which I'm witnessing, because that is happening within my research group, my PhD students who are working, how they're using artificial intelligence to enhance the quality of the research in positive way, obviously. So we're going to talk about those case studies, and finally we are going to wrap up as usual with the discussion and suggestions and what you think is about artificial intelligence in education sector. Now, the first one is, I'm sure people may have in the audience in this room must have come across these bullet points maybe in a different form, in a blog or on a YouTube. But the reason I'm putting it in this very simple format is to kickstart the discussion, right? First benefit, which I think, is to personalize the experience of learning and teaching. Now, when we say personalize the experience, what exactly that means to you? And I'll be happy to hear some views from the faculty member first, and then I can switch to the staff. What you think is the personalization of learning and teaching means in the context of students? Yeah,
That when they are referring according to their mentality or their person, like how to accept some information, so it differs.
yeah,
So individually they can get different information or take example if you want to prompt in ChatGPT, different people will give different prompts.
yeah,
Based on that they will be getting the information.
right.
So what I get information other may not get, or they will be getting a better information.
Okay, no, that's a good point. Any other point someone would like to add? Yes, that's a valid point. Now,
And also why we are asking that type of question.
okay, excellent. This all covers. I'm not saying that whatever you said doesn't come under this scope, right? But I'll add one more point over here. Now, I'm here since Monday, I think. It's been hardly 2 days when I've met you. So everyone is new for me, right? I don't know much about you guys. Although if I want to go and if I start looking at your research, your profile, then perhaps I might start getting some insights of what kind of work you do and what kind of things you're interested in. But at the moment, everyone is equal and same for me. In fact, I can't even distinguish who is student and who is a member of staff in this auditorium, right? Now, what it means is that for someone who is starting afresh, everything looks same, but eventually, just imagine, this is not going to happen, but just imagine that you may have to see me, unfortunately, for another 30 days. Well, that's not going to happen. We are here for just a week. But imagine that you guys have to see me for another 30 days or 60 days, and I'm supposed to, again, come with a session and do some content delivery as I'm doing now, and with the same audience, what will happen? And I'll tell you what will happen. I can start building your profile within my mind, although that's not always ethical to do, but I might start getting a sense that this person is very responsive, this person isn't responsive, this person is brilliant, this person is not so brilliant, and so on, which is not a good thing, but as a human, my cognitive sense will guide me in that direction. Now, there could be two aspects of this. When I'm giving this example, obviously one would say that, is it a good thing or a bad thing? It's both. Good in a sense, obviously I discussed about the not so good side, but the good thing is that once you have a profile, once you know that how your student is going to respond, what are their strengths and the weaknesses, you may start customizing the content as much as you can. Of course, it's not a one-to-one session that I can go and talk to everyone individually, but still if I get a sense of who is at what level, what are their strengths and what are their weaknesses, then what I can do, I can start coming up with those examples which strike that particular student or a group of students. Now, this is the kind of customization we can do even without artificial intelligence, right? But that requires my cognitive ability to behave in that direction or behave in that way. Of course, as the name suggests, artificial intelligence is artificial. It's not a very natural intelligence. As a human, we are all naturally intelligent to make that kind of judgment and to make that kind of decisions, right? So even without any AI tool, we can start doing that. But in reality, that's not always going to happen. It's going to add extra work to me, and it's not always going to be feasible. In that sense, perhaps AI can be used for personalizing, for customizing the content, so that what will happen, there could be some way to kickstart this work. Let's say that before starting a session, starting a module, we can come up with maybe some questions, some set of questions, like it could be something which is fundamental to the topic, but something as not in a way to provide them the direct feedback, but just to understand where they stand, where they are at the moment. We are in India, right? And in India, there is something called competitive exam for everything. We have competitive exams for getting admission into undergraduate courses, whether it's medicine, engineering, science, everything, right? So I'm at the right platform. If I would be saying same thing in the US or in the UK, things would be, it wouldn't be easy for me to give this example. But as we are standing in India, uh, why do we need to go for that kind of competitive exams? Just to understand where we stand, right? So it's the same thing. So maybe we can start progressing to this customization by first of all giving you some set of exercises which students can attempt, and based on how they are scoring and performing, then we can use AI model to come up with some prescription, like you get a prescription from doctor that what would be the best recipe for you and what's going to work for you and what's not going to work for you, right? So it's that kind of approach. The third one is, I'm not a big fan of this point, but it's about automation of administrative tasks, because as an academic, uh, it might not apply so much to the students at this point, but it's mostly for the member of staff who are teaching and doing research. We may be overwhelmed with some admin work, and of course, as we know that artificial intelligence is, in theory, capable of optimizing those workloads and automating and making it faster and making the whole process a lot more efficient and easier. So we can use AI positively in that direction as well. Now, that said, let's go and start digging in further and see what different benefits we can think of. So the one we discussed the customization or the adaptive learning approach. The first point I've already talked about, that this is about giving the initial assessment to assess the current level of knowledge on a given topic. Now, once you are doing that, and once you get the response from the students, the response could be in what different form? It could be binary, or it could be like you give some objective questions, some multiple choice questions kind of thing, and those things are very easy to judge, right? But if, let's say that you are making that initial assessment using some qualitative kind of stuff, where you are asking them to write an essay on something, or something which contains lots of text instead of crisp quantitative figure, then how are you going to make the analysis of that data? Because that's the data, right? Data doesn't always mean data in the Excel sheet or in the textual form, right? And if you guys are thinking why I'm bringing data here, you have to tolerate this, because I'm a data scientist. My job is to bring data in every discussion, right? And artificial intelligence, in the end of the day, it's backed by the data, so data has something very important role to play in this case. So you have the data, you collected the data from the student's response. How are you going to analyze those data? Is that just going to be on the basis of saying word by word? No, that doesn't work, because if you ask a subjective question, the answer would also be subjective. And to make an assessment of the subjectivity, you need, is there anyone who have experience with any basic artificial intelligence model or machine learning model? Can you raise your hand? They can be member of staff, they can be students. Can you raise your hand if you are interested in AI, machine learning? That's fine. I'm not going to ask questions. It's just about triggering the discussion. Is there anyone in this room? Ma'am, you? You? You, right? So what do you think could be a natural choice of to analyze that kind of data, where you have got answers in like essay? If let's say you have got 50 students in your cohort, and all of the 50 students have submitted, let's say 200 words of essay, obviously one way is to go and start doing the marking as we do, right? But what if we could use some sort of natural language processing tool, for instance? Even a basic one would help us to understand whether or not students have picked up the right keyword. When I'm saying basic, It could be even natural language toolkit, NLTK kind of thing. Or you can even use some more smart version if you want. But what I'm trying to say here is that this could be be a potential use case for the initial assessment. But bear in mind, I don't know if this struck to you or not while I was saying, we are walking on a very thin and tight rope. The moment I say you can make use of AI to do the assessment, in no way I'm saying that you should be doing that for the summative and the main assessment. So for example, if you are asking students to submit the assignment as part of the assessment process, and if that's a summative assessment, if what it means is that the marks which students will score will actually get added in their transcript, I'm not recommending to use AI for that kind of thing. Why? Because still, we are not mature enough to make that kind of strong judgment just based on an AI tool. While what we can do, we can make those initial assessment or the formative assessment, because obviously I know most of you would be knowing that there are two broad major types of assessment. One is the formative one, another one is the summative assessment. Formative assessment is where you provide some tasks to the students, you ask them to respond, you provide some feedback, you can also do some marking, but that doesn't quite get added into the main transcript. That's the whole point of doing the formative assessment, is to provide feedback to the students on time so that they can start working on their weaknesses and they can improve eventually, right? So that's something we need to understand. So for anything which is not going to have a major impact on the profile of final marks, we can try bringing artificial intelligence to enhance our performance. That will reduce the workload substantially, and even though there are some risks, but that's not a huge risk that cannot compromise the performance of the students as such, right? So we can take that calculated risk to make our life easy, but it doesn't mean that you start doing that and maybe after 12 months if your dean or vice chancellor says, why are you doing that? You put blame on my head. Please don't do that. But whatever you are doing, you should make your own kind of assessment, your own calculation, what works for you, what doesn't work for you. One size doesn't fit all. The third point is, I think I've already said, signposting to the specific lessons and the learning materials. So when you are using artificial intelligence to make that kind of assessment, initial profiling of the students, what you can also do at the same time, you can also start doing some automatic signposting to the right resources. When I'm saying signposting, you know what is signposting. When you go on road, on the motorways, on highways, you start seeing some signboards, right? Whether to go right or left or north, south, etc. So that's called signposting. So when whenever we are using signposting in this context, I am essentially trying to refer to a situation where you signpost student to certain resources which they might have to read or refer to kind of formulate their understanding in a particular subject area, right? As we do in the end of a paper, what we do, we write references, we cite the sources. That's also a kind of signposting. So those signposting activities can also be done using some smart artificial intelligence model. These things are quite doable, okay? With the existing computational infrastructure you guys are having with such, interesting facilities which I can see here, I have no doubt that these things can't be done within Mangalore University. So try getting your hands dirty with, some basic AI application. Don't just think that AI tool is just for AI tool means ChatGPT and that's the end of the world. That's obviously part of artificial intelligence, but you can start building your own model even with the basic skill sets if you have got with the artificial intelligence. The good news is that even if you haven't got that expertise at the moment, you can start digging into the resources in the open source. Google, IBM, Microsoft, they're all happy to train you free of cost to get those expertise which you can use for developing some basic but interesting AI models. Obviously, then that can be used for providing the feedback. I think I've already covered this point, which would be real-time feedback coming from the AI tool, but you might be able to provide feedback in real time, like we do for any typical formative assessment, and that will perhaps, and it's proven, I'm not just speculating, but the data suggests that this approach would eventually help the performance of the students and the engagement of the students in the classroom. Progress tracking, yes, that also comes within that purview, that once you start with the initial profiling, once you start doing the signposting to the right resources, once you are tracking, once you know how they're performing, then you can start progressing, you can start tracking their progress, and if there is any intervention required at all, that can be done without any loss of time. Enough of me, talking like a monologue. Now it's time for you guys to start thinking a bit more on what I said, because as we say, sky is the limit. Same goes to the artificial intelligence. Those 2-3 bullet points are not the only things that can be used in educational settings. There could be multiple things which you could think as benefits within higher education sector. What you guys think? And like my colleague Chaminda, I'm not using Miro board or anything because I think it's the second half of the session. Everyone is a bit tired with some good lunch with the rice and sambar. People want to be in a relaxed mode, so I'm not asking you to start putting anything on Miro board or anything like that, but feel free to, come up with some suggestion. And if you don't speak to me, trust me, I can reach to your desk. I'm known for those things. I can come to your desk and I can start talking to you. What do you think? I mean, you can volunteer. What do you think could be the additional benefits of artificial intelligence? When I'm saying additional, I mean in addition to what I have already talked. Anyone? Yes. Sir.
It's like working like a neural network like that. If we ask anything with chat AI or any bot, that will work like a neural network. Means if I ask anything, that will answer me like that. Not again and again I will ask this. Does not give repeatedly answer that only. Means that will be think and what is that different type that will answer. That output will be different.
That's because it's a generative. If you're talking about ChatGPT, it's a point. I know what you're trying to refer. So if it's a generative artificial intelligence, it tries to regenerate the answer, and that's why you don't get exactly 100% similar content every time you generate the answer.
That will give 100%
Right.
answer.
Yeah.
But it will give not same.
I got.
Different it will.
I know, but what do you think is the benefit, other benefit of artificial intelligence in education sector? Sorry, I'm not kind of, I'm not trying to avoid your question. I completely got what you said. That's very typical in example like Time GPT or Chat GPT, right? Where the answer, multiple times if you ask question, it doesn't mean that they're giving you the wrong answer. It's the right answer, but again, it won't exactly be 100% same. Right? I got your point, okay? So with all due respect, what do you think is the benefit of artificial intelligence?
You can understand easily.
In education sector?
In education sector.
Yeah. Understand whom?
Means, explain. I'm just asking with any part.
Yeah.
Explain me C++.
Okay.
It will be explained like child to like
Okay.
advanced.
Okay. Got it. So it's more kind of using, like you do a Google search. If you get stuck, sorry, sir. Want more information. Yeah.
When we teach.
Exactly. Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, excellent point. So as Professor Khan just said, and all of you guys, sorry, I don't remember your name, so I'm just saying sir, ma'am, but I know Professor Khan. So as Professor Khan rightly said that, yes, if you think about Google search engine, for instance, when Google search engine came into prominence, I was a kid, okay? So, but it doesn't mean that I don't know how it started, right? I've seen the phases when there was no such thing and how people would struggle to get the answer, even for the basic thing. People would go and buy encyclopedia and those kind of, I don't know, countless books to get those answers. But now, if you have a query, you just go and throw that question on the search bar and you get the answer, even on your smartphone. You don't even need a laptop or a personal computer. Now, if we start using this generative AI kind of thing, in addition or in conjunction to the Google search engine, perhaps that's going to augment our experience, because it start answering question like this gentleman said, that you ask a question, it start kind of teaching you even from the basic. If you ask a question that how's the climate of Mangalore and what kind of clothes should I have if I'm traveling from the UK in March, they would advise you like, you are coming for the first time. Unfortunately, I didn't ask, so I struggled. I'm still struggling with the humidity. I should have done that, but I think you got the point, right? So these are the things which you can think of. Well, this session is based on the uses of AI in the higher education, so I'm trying to constrain the discussion within education, but there's so many things which can actually be used in different other sectors as well, okay? It's not just only confined to the educational settings. Now, for every good thing, there are some side effects as well, right? When we get sick, we go to the doctor, they prescribe antibiotic, which might be good for the cold and the virus, but then there are some side effects on the stomach and different other things, right? So that goes to the artificial intelligence as well. For any technology, we have to be careful about what are the limitations and how we can best use a technology without getting into a trap of misusing the technology or being misused by the technology. Pay attention to the word, these are two different things. Sometimes you can misuse the technology, sometimes you could be misused by the technology as well. Okay, you might get into trap of cyber attack or something. But before we start discussion about the risk and the challenges, to kickstart the discussion, let me start with a few pointers. The first, I think the risk associated with any AI algorithm is bias in the algorithm. Now, bias is always present, right? I mean, as I said, that's a very human kind of thing. We all say that we are not judging you, but in the deep within our heart, everyone judges everyone else, right? That's how we are, how complex we are as a human. Now, same goes to most of the data-driven algorithms. Can anyone tell me how these biases are actually infused into any algorithm? If you have any prior experience working with a data-driven model, you might guess what I'm asking. Can anyone suggest why a bias can actually kick in to an algorithm in the first place, and how we could avoid that, if there is a way to avoid? Sorry. Yeah.
If I'm involved in writing the algorithm,
Yeah.
so bias will be towards what I think.
Exactly. So and this is why to have a robust performance from something like ChatGPT, for instance. The reason I'm bringing this ChatGPT again and again is because people mostly correlate with ChatGPT when we talk about AI, is that the reason it's considered a bit robust compared to other trivial AI model is because it's trained by different types of data. And this is why, I don't know the name of that gentleman, this is why the thing which he was saying, Kiran, that you get different answer at different time, is all because of the fact that the answer would be nearly correct, but it's not 100% identical because of the way model has been trained. Okay, so yes, that could be a way to minimize the bias, but AI algorithms, as we said, can amplify the biases present in the training data. Now, I know everyone here would have some understanding, if not much, that how a data-driven model works, right? So it's about training a model with some historical information. Now, I can give my example because I know myself more than anyone else knows me. So I'm here in this part of India, I think, for the first time. I'm visiting Mangaluru for the first time. Though I was born in India, but I'm visiting here for the first time. Now, when I came here, I collected some data. Intrinsically, I'm kind of getting some data about the weather, how this part of India is, how the food is, how people talk, how they respond, etc., etc. And if I keep visiting this city and this state again and again, I'll be training myself more and more with this historical data. Now, what will happen? It's kind of training myself with this data from this part of Karnataka or India. And what will happen that if after 5 years of time, someone in where I live in the UK, in Cardiff, if someone asks, how is it about going to Mangaluru? I mean, what kind of things we can expect? I can answer that very easily because I have been trained with those data. However, the way it works is that I'm not going to eat every single cuisine which you guys are having here. It's not even possible for me. I'll upset my stomach if I even try to do that, to try everything in 6, 7 days. I may try maybe 5-10% of cuisines which you eat on a day-to-day basis. But based on that information as well, I can have some sense like what different foods you might be eating. So if someone asks that, okay, how does this food taste in Mangaluru? Even if I haven't eaten that in the past, I can still do some prediction because of some training data, some historical data, which has been embedded within me. And that prediction will have certain accuracy. It may not be 100% accurate because I haven't eaten that before in person. I'm making, it's not a guess, it's a prediction, it's a forecasting, but it's based on the information which is there while I was in Karnataka or in Mangaluru. Now, while I'm saying, the reason I came up with this example, a very organic example rather than showing you how training and testing works in Python script or in Java, the reason I came up with this organic example because it's best to then correlate how a bias can actually get inside. Now, this is the training data about the food and the cuisines I'm trying. As I said, I can't eat everything. Now, even with the kind of food I'm having, let's say I'm having my breakfast in Vivanta Hotel where I'm staying, that is being cooked a bit differently from how your family would cook in your home. But I'm not going to have exactly what you eat at your home. I'm gonna eat what I'm eating at hotel. So there is some bias. Even for the same cuisine, with the same taste, with the same cuisine, there would be some difference in the taste and the amount of spices used and so on. Now that bias kind of introduced in the model. So whenever I'll be making the prediction, that will have an influence on the accuracy of the prediction. Is that example simple enough? Even for those students and member of staff who have no prior experience, that's why I'm coming with these kind of examples, okay? Now, the other one is that leading to an unfair treatment or discrimination against certain group of students. Now, I understand that discrimination in any form is not considered good, no matter where you are, whether you are in India, in the UK, in the US, doesn't matter. We, as a human, we tend, in a civilized society, we can't discriminate against anyone, right? Everyone is equal. However, it could be that if we are not using the artificial intelligence tool in educational setting in a right way, in an ethical way, there could be some elements of discrimination as well, right? So, I mean, based on the profiling we have done for the various students, it could be that there could be some discrimination, which I'm not saying is going to happen, but yes, there are some probability that it might happen. But then someone would answer, it would happen anyways. I mean, even without artificial intelligence tool, a teacher or a student, it goes both ways. They can have some kind of opinion or some views about someone and they might start discriminating. So what I'm trying to tell here is that, yes, we do that kind of thing even as a human, but when we are using AI tool, we have to be even more careful because we don't have much control over those algorithms. We may have some control over ourselves just based on how we eat, how much meditation we do, how much we walk, how much yoga we do. We do have certain control on ourselves, but we don't have much control on the tools and the techniques we are using in AI. Hence, it's very much essential to understand the various types of bias which might come in and be prepared to address those things. There could be some privacy concerns as well, as I said. This is interesting, and this is kind of, I would like to hear more from you guys, because in the UK system, for instance, in the UK higher education system, if let's say, we receive a phone call from a family member of a student asking about the marks of a student or any detail about this student, even if they are parents of this student, we can't we can't reveal those information to them. It's because of the data privacy agreement we have, the GDPR things, and many other data protection things we have got in that country. So if the moment person is adult, we can't share any personal information associated to them, even to their parents, without their consent. I know things might work a bit differently in Indian setting, even if not very different, but I mean, even if there could be something similar to that in terms of data protection. But what I think everyone would agree that everyone has a right of privacy, right? If not, certainly we should move in that direction. Now, one of the downside with the artificial intelligence tools being used in the educational setting is that the moment you start looking too much into someone's performance and someone's, and if you start profiling them, then vast amount of student data employed for the AI model training and analysis, raising privacy concerns regarding data collection, storage, and the uses. So what it means is that in the end of the day, we are using data, we are collecting the data from the students for training the model, and that stays within the model, right? It's something, again, I'm trying to come up with an easier example that if you, let's say, if you come up with a documentation, some important documentation, your certificate, your transcript, if you go and try to put that in the open ground, if you think that it's gonna stay safe for some time, that's okay. But if you even if you put it there for 2 hours, there are risks that someone else might see your important documents. So even if you bring it back, chances are that it has been compromised. Someone has looked into into those personal information. It's same thing that if you're collecting those personal data, when I'm saying personal data, it might not essentially be the date of birth, sex, and etc. But even if it's about the profile of marks, their understanding, their cognitive skills, if that data is being used in certain ways for training, that stays with the algorithm, that stays within the system, right? It's like potential compromise, but again, there are ways to protect those things. My colleague, Chami, he's an expert in that area, so I'm not touching that territory, how we can best protect those information. But yes, we have to be careful about how, the things could be compromised when we are overusing AI, or even if we are using AI, but not with the due care. Robust data protection measure required at institutional level to safeguard students' personal information and maintain trust. So again, I'm coming back to you guys, and especially with someone like Professor Khan who might enlighten me. What kind of data protection policy you have at university level to protect the sensitive and personal data of the student? Do you have any such measures in place, or it's a standard government thing which directly or indirectly applies to you? Yeah. Okay. Okay, excellent. Now, as we do data protection for various reasons, as Professor Khan said, but when we are employing artificial intelligence model at a wider scale, we have to be a bit more careful because you are exposing personal data and those sensitive data at even larger scale. So hence, we have to be a bit more careful when we are using AI models. Now again, I'm getting tired, so I planned some discussion so that you guys can speak. Can you talk about students' data protection policy in your institution? I think Professor Khan has already said, but what's your view as a member of staff or as a student? What do you think is that data protection policy works? How does it work within your institution? Are you happy with that, or you think there might be some scope of improvement? It's good. What do you think? Scope of improvement. What do you think, ma'am? Advancement for. What is the current, although this is not a part of question, but I'm asking out of curiosity, that what's the kind of extent of, using some predictive model or these smart tools being used? I mean, I know that people might be using for the research and innovation purposes, but is there any implementation at the policy level at where people are making a decision? No, not yet. Okay. Yeah.
There is a centralized data.
Yeah.
In the sense, there is something called NAD.
Yeah.
NAD is a place where all the documents about every student are placed.
Okay.
Okay. So all over India, the
Yeah.
whole country,
Okay.
we have one repository
All right.
where all our data will be stored.
Okay. And is obvious? Yeah. Sorry.
That is going towards paperless. So our degree certificate, everything will be there with the coded form.
Okay. All right.
You can open your whatever with your ID
Yeah.
and have access to your documents.
Exactly. Now, as rightly pointed out by Professor Khan, so this is like, two ways thing. One is obviously there are some advantages as well if you are having a centralized repository, that if you want to use that for smart decision making, yes, you can, but there is also risk of compromise of, yeah, right. So, well, since this session is not about cybersecurity, so I'm not spending too much time on discussing what different measures we can use to improve the security aspect. For that, my colleague Chami is expert on that, and we can have another discussion with him. This is more about AI, so I am again coming back to that, some of the points associated to the uses of AI. Now, artificial intelligence, of course, this is a technology, but this is not the only technology, right? Even these gentlemen working on those laptops and making these streamings on YouTube, this is also technology, right? We are using the laptops for updating information on the Miro board. That's also a technology, right? I'm using this microphone, and so this all comes under technology. But how much we can depend on a technology? And the reason I'm framing this question in a way that dependency on technology rather than dependency on AI, because if we first understand what will happen if we over-depend on technology, then perhaps some of the spillover can inform us about what might happen if we start over-depending on artificial intelligence, right? So let's start with some broader thing, that over-dependency on AI technology in higher education may diminish critical thinking skills, creativity, and human interaction. Now, sorry for bringing a lot of different points under one blanket statement, but isn't it true to some extent, right? Especially with the critical thinking part, right? So, as we have access to the information using ChatGPT, Google search engine, and so on, but now we don't tend to think as much as you used to think like 20 years ago, right? About any situation, about any problem, right? If I remember correctly, when in 90s when I was school-going kid, we would have access to the textbook. I'm not sure if that still applies. We used to have something called NCERT, National Council of Education Research. I think that's valid, right? And that was the only source of information for us, right? In 7th standard and 5th standard, if we would need to refer anything, there would be some supplementary material as well from different other publishers. But what that would mean is that we were allowed to critically think about something, try to formulate solution. Now those aspects are somehow being compromised, if not 100%, then to some extent. So we have to be careful about how much, and as this session is about thinking of AI in educational settings, and this pretty much applies to every educational institution, so we have to be careful about how much exposure of AI tools we actually can afford to have without losing this creativity. Because remember, machine cannot replace human, right? We are the one who created AI. AI hasn't created us. So no matter what happens, we shouldn't be at a stage where we start losing out this, the natural skills we have got as a human. And this might have an impact in the next 200 years if we don't start thinking now, okay? Creativity, yes. I mean, I'm not an artist. I haven't drawn anything except national flag of India. I don't know how to do any drawing, but I'm sure many of you would be artists in some way. You might have done some drawing and et cetera, et cetera. That also can be compromised if we start overusing AI. Because again, that's a kind of a creativity means that how well you can think without all the prior data and all the prior information, how much you can think in advance, how much you can envision, because if you're not creative, you can't build just the good architecture just with the help of CAD. CAD is a tool which can help you to design, come up with a design, but even to use a CAD, you need to have a creativity, right? Leading to a reduction in the quality of education and student learning experiences. So whatever we discussed, yes, that can be cascaded eventually into the quality of education and the overall experience of the students. So what we need to do is that we need to make a right balance between how much we can use AI and how much we can't. It's something similar to saying that although we might like some spicy food, but if we start eating too much spicy food every day in every meal, then that's not good for our stomach. We also need to eat the foods which are healthy, like vegetables and the fruits, salads, right? So it's a kind of compromise. Not compromise, it's the right balance which you need to think of while incorporating any such artificial intelligence tool. I hope that makes sense. Now, I'm going to spend more time on this part. Can you talk about the current state of tools and technology employed in teaching? It doesn't necessarily have to be artificial intelligence. And remember, I'm referring the word teaching. I'm not referring the word conference streaming and so on. So if you're using this tool for the teaching, yes, you can count that. But if it's being used just for conference and the workshop, then perhaps not. Can you think a bit more on that? Excellent. And can you go and elaborate a bit more how exactly that works?
We can upload many things. We are having the contact with the students, and there are several other campus management softwares available.
That's.
People code.
But what? Are you based in Mangalore University, or you're based in different university?
Yeah,
but if I heard someone said that Mangalore University isn't using any virtual learning platform at the moment.
I mean, individual colleges can have. Like
Okay.
campus management, like assignment. They
All
can
right.
share with the students. Students also have
Mhm.
their own login.
Mhm.
Like it's a campus management where they can also have an assessment and awareness about their like internal marks.
Okay.
Shortage.
Mhm.
Parents also will be getting some alert regarding. So it's like a campus management software.
Okay, excellent. Is there any uses of something called Turnitin? For instance, Turnitin can be used for comparing the similarity, yeah? Plagiarism for PhD students, mostly, yeah? Yeah, but not necessarily for the undergraduates at the moment. Okay. So there is a scope of enhancing that technology, okay. Any other form of technology which you are using? Please don't talk about Google and Microsoft, because obviously everyone is having email ID. So what else you people use for teaching and educational purposes?
Within the campus, we have learning management systems.
Yeah, LMS. Okay,
So assessments and we have the uploading of the materials,
all right.
preloading of the videos.
I mean, the content which, like the video, yeah. Okay, excellent. And is there any other tool such as Panapto or Mahara, those kind of tools you use in addition to? Not at the moment. Okay. Yeah. Right. Right. Yeah. Excellent. But I'm kind of presuming that we are still not using the data to go a step further and do any kind of prediction or forecasting, right? We haven't yet reached that point. Okay. So it's good to understand where we stand. I mean, when we say we, I'm referring to Mangalore University because I'm standing here. So it's important to see where we stand and how far we can go. And while we are going that far, what different things we need to consider. Have you heard this term before, digital divide? Yeah? I can't remember the name of one of the lady who was sitting on, I think, that desk yesterday. And my colleague Chami, when he was leading the session, I think the question was that, if I remember correctly, the question was that, would you prefer doing some, getting some teaching content sitting at home rather than coming to campus every day? I think he responded saying that perhaps it's not ideal. He would like to come every day to the campus. Now, without judging him, and please don't reveal his name because we want to make it anonymous. Even I know you know his name. Without judging anyone, I mean, let's make it think in an anonymous way. That if someone says that they are perhaps willing to come to campus just for accessing the basic facilities, what it means is that perhaps they don't have access to the right facilities in their home, right? So despite the fact that India is growing, Digital India is, and there are so many campaigns, and the reason I know a lot about these things because originally I'm from India, so I'm aware of most of the things which are happening in this country. So I know it's growing at a very fast pace with the very good connection, internet, 5G, eventually 6G and so on. But still, there are some sort of digital divide which we need to be careful about, right? So when we are thinking of bringing in technologies as the mainstream thing, we have to be careful about so the certain percentage of students or even member of staff who perhaps might not have those facilities outside campus. So this is where, this is happening even, at the situation at the point when we are not even having AI, right? We are not even we are not even incorporating AI. Now think what will happen if we start making AI as the mainstream tool in education sector. Right? So the things might get a bit more complicated, but it doesn't mean that we have to be pessimistic in that sense. Yes, things would change eventually. Providing services, the good network and the good computing facilities would happen, if not now. So, but again, this is a fact that we have to be careful about. This fact that while we are switching to the modern technologies, we don't end up being in a situation where there is a big gap, digital divide between certain population and certain population, right? So we have to be very careful about that. Why? Because again, that's not a fair and acceptable way. We all want equality. We all want the things to be fair for everyone. So equitable access to the AI resources should be priority for the institution, right? If we are, when we say that, yes, we can provide you the resources, how we are doing, do we have the right infrastructure, do we have the right budget to do that? So it's a long-term thing. Any good thing requires planning. It can't just be done in an ad hoc way, right? And I know how any institution for that matter works. There are so many things you need to plan. Maybe some kind of pilot project could be tried instead of bringing artificial intelligence tool for every department, every classroom. Let's start with something pilot. We do that even within Cardiff Met. And I can tell you one of the example, that's not in my presentation slide, but that just struck to me while I'm talking to you. That's a very interesting example. We do have a system of personal tutoring within, in most of the UK universities. Now, what does it mean? It doesn't mean that a personal tutor is going to help with the assessment or help with the taught content. That's not, because I know the name is deceiving. It seems that they are going to help as a tutor. The personal tutor is a member of staff, member of academic staff. Every student has been allocated one personal tutor, And personal tutor is mostly responsible to understand the well-being, how the student is doing, and as a first point of contact if they are struggling with anything. If they are struggling in, let's say, the study or finance or so many different things, they can go and speak to the personal tutor, and the job of the personal tutor is to signpost to the right resources. More than that, personal tutor is also responsible for observing the engagement of the student. So like we have got attendance system here in India, we also have got attendance system, but the way it works differently is that we don't ask, we don't say that if you don't attend the session, you won't be able to write the exam, you must have 75, 85% attendance. It doesn't work strictly in that sense. But it doesn't mean that we don't bother about attendance. Just to clarify, we all want almost every student to be present every day, and if they're not attending the classes, this is the mechanism how it works. Personal tutor would go and speak to the student, understanding what is the reason why you are not in the classroom. Are you struggling with something, your mental health, your any other things which we can help you with, and so on. Can you guess where I'm going with this? I'll give you a more, I'll explain you why I came up with this example. So until I think 2023, we did have very much like a semi-automatic system wherein a student would go and request a meeting with the personal tutor. They would get a notification on their email that this person wants to meet you, your tutee wants to meet you, and you schedule a meeting with them. And based on the meeting, you collect some data and you do the necessary step. Either you signpost to some right point of contact, or you try to help them if that's within your purview. Now, this was a semi-automatic process because the data which a personal tutor would collect would be not very organized. Sometimes they would use Microsoft Word, sometimes they would use Microsoft OneNote, sometimes spreadsheet, and so on. Now, to make everything more organized and in a way to make best use of artificial intelligence in this context, we have got a new system, a new software system where the engagement of the students, meeting with the personal tutor, everything will get recorded and will automatically, you will start getting the insights. And with those insights, with those visualization, we could actually kind of predict if a student is going to perform well in the next semester or term or not, if the student is able to move to that next year or not, or whether they would be in a situation where they have to withdraw, and so on. Now, these kind of insights we have started getting in automatic way, and this is again one of the classic example of how best artificial intelligence can be used, right? This is not in the presentation slide, unfortunately, but this is an example which I thought is worth sharing. Now, while we are doing that, yes, we have to first make sure that it's the access to the resources are in an equal and fair manner without any discrimination or without putting anyone in a situation where they can't access the AI just because they don't have the right resources. What about the ethics? Do you have any ethics committee? I'm sure that you must have ethics committee within university deciding on the ethics of the research, right? How do you deal with human data? Let's say if you go and start interviewing 100 participants for a research, can you just go straight and start collecting the data? No, I don't think so, right? Right. Right. And someone in ethics committee would look at your case and will approve or either disapprove. If it's not approved, they might come up with a suggestion, and then you can do that, right? It's same, right? So I'm glad that, yeah, at least we are on the exactly same page when it comes to ethics. So yes, ethics is important, but is that only kind of relevant to the research and innovation, right? For instance, if there was a talk scheduled for at 2:30, and if, let's say, instead of coming here, I would go to a beach in Mangaluru, would that be an ethical way? No, that's not an ethical way, right? Although I'm kind of struggling with the humidity and sore throat, but still it's my responsibility to be here because I have committed to be here. In the same way, there are ethical dilemmas which we need to understand and consider, and the number one in the context of AI is that prioritizing the efficiency over the student well-being. Now, this is very important and very much close to my heart because I have been involved in some of the committees and also as the program director of one of the postgraduate program, which I did until the last year. I've seen that how it could be difficult to balance two things because once we are trying to push artificial intelligence to improve the performance, but is that everything? As a human, because every student is also a human, right? So they also have they also have so many things going on around their family, their society, and so many different things are happening. So is that the only thing which we should be which we should be concerned of? Performance? Do you want to say something, ma'am? Okay. Well-being is equally important, right? How we are doing, whether we are in the right state of mind or not, whether our mental health is in the right direction or not. Mental health, it doesn't mean that everyone, I mean, people can talk normally, but they still might not be in a good mental health. So we have to be considerate, compassionate at the same time. It's not just about pushing someone based on an AI generated model data. Say if, let's say the AI model says that this student is struggling, this is the time for the intervention, and without even thinking with that human side, you just come up with that result and a recommendation. That's not the right way. You first need to understand, again, bring your human side first to understand what might be the situation, why they are not engaging, why they are not performing well. And then that, if that is backed with the data generated by the AI model, then that could make a difference. So, right, it's again, the bottom line in most of the examples I'm coming up with is to tell you that this is a tool, and like any tool, like smartphone, like smart TV, this is a tool which you can use in the positive way if you want to use, otherwise chances are that you might not be using it the right way, and it might backfire as well at some point, right? Making decisions with significant consequences without human oversight. Yeah, I think pretty much I covered this aspect. So when you are not giving consideration to that human elements, and when you start making decisions just based on outcome of a model, then things might not be considered ethical. Okay, ethics doesn't just mean is not just relevant in research and innovation. Let me see if why it's not charging. Is this not connected? This is my charging. This should go there. Mm-hmm. Yeah, now it's charging. We're talking about technology, and technology was about to deceive me. There is no projection over there. Okay, I think I deserve a break for sipping water. And meanwhile, can you think of some other risks and challenges? Although I covered the majority of them, but still your job is to think of more, I mean, something more on top of that, risks and the challenges of implementing artificial intelligence in education. It should be something new. Yes, that's what, I mean, I think you can, or someone from member of staff can help to figure out who is a student, because I'm not sure who is student and who is not. Yes, sir, you. Yes, I'm talking to you, sir. Can you think of any other risks and challenges implementing AI in education? You heard what I said. Those were just few examples. By the way, which course you belong to? Do you cybersecurity, right? So you still have some strong element of computing associated with that. If you're talking about cybersecurity, we are talking about make the system more secure. So it's not that it's like a different topic for you. It's the same thing pretty much. Can you think of any other risk and issues with AI in education settings, not in a different
What I can think of right now is maybe critical thinking,
Mm-hmm.
or depending on AI for finding errors in your program or something like that.
Mm-hmm. So you said critical thinking, but I think we already discussed that, right? Any other thing which you can come up with?
Depending AI to debug your programs.
Okay. Sir, sitting next to you.
If we have to implement AI in our education system, actually like even the faculty should be trained how to use it. So the training takes a long time.
Okay, training requirement. That's a very valid point, and uh, that's noted. Anything else which you think apart from training? Okay.
To make proper intervention and conclusion from the decisions taken by AI, because human intervention and emotions to be added, because we are dealing with humans.
Yeah.
So that an AI system will be generating some results,
Yeah.
but apart from that, we must have a personalized understanding.
Okay.
The other end. Then only then including both these things, we can go.
Okay.
further.
So augmenting artificial intelligence result with human, right?
Similarly, scanning an image for tumors, they
Yeah.
will be giving some results, but then also doctor's intervention is required.
Right. So that's again a valid point. We haven't talking about artificial intelligence decision support system in critical system like ICU and so on, but we all agree, yes, a human intervention can't be avoided altogether. But what I got your point completely. Thanks for that. I think what you're trying to tell here is that if we are thinking of educational settings, right, implementing AI in educational settings, first of all, we need to understand who could be at the highest risk. For example, if we talk about ICU, it's like open and shut case. Anyone can say that just because it's about patient who is in critical condition, you need a human intervention at the same time. When we are talking about educational setting, it's not a matter of life and death for sure. Thankfully, that's where we are at the moment. But again, who you think are the risky population or risky thing, or the risk which kind of require us to have the human intervention? What you think?
Psychological part.
Psychological, the mental health, the well-being, right? Again, it goes to the well-being of the students.
Individually
Yeah.
it will be different, the
Right.
the
Right.
emotions between
Right.
the circumstances like the digital divide. So reasons are there.
Exactly. So again, it's a very interesting point. So what it means is that although we are thinking about bringing technologies, artificial intelligence technologies, but how we can formulate, what kind of policy we should have, whether we can have this human intervention at the same time, and who is going to be accountable for that, because it cannot be on a on a voluntary basis that I want to do that, right? You must have someone assigned to that. So you want to create a new job for that, okay? Make sure that you have the right budget to do that, to have a new member of staff who is going to work in addition to AI. Okay, joke aside, yes, that's a good point. Any other point which you perhaps might want to add?
Educational sector
Yeah.
or within the campus. So what I believe that you have already covered it. So
Yeah.
mainly it is going to hinder or block the creativity.
Yeah. Yep.
We are seeing this in our schools and institutions also.
Yeah.
So critical thinking and creativity blocks.
Okay. No, that's a valid point. Now, as I had promised, this session was not designed to be a long session, so probably I'm coming to a point where I'll start summarizing, but then I'll also discuss about some case study, some examples, some practical examples which we are doing within Cardiff Met. In terms of the responsible AI uses, we must have the transparency, accountability, fairness, privacy, and accessibility. And we have we have discussed these points in the length and width, so we don't need to repeat the same thing again and again. But this is just to summarize what we discussed so far. Now comes the time to, and this is the most interesting part for me because I can come up with some real examples of how artificial intelligence AI tool is being incorporated in some of the research project. So I'm supervising 5 PhD students at the moment, and I'm coming up with 2 examples. One example is and I can give you some context so that you can understand. But before I go there, how many of you are using wearable devices on your hand? Oh, sorry, on your wrist? You can raise your hand. Smartwatches, the wearable. How many of you are using? Can you raise your hand? Okay, good. I'm using the analog one, see. I've never used wearable devices, although one of my PhD students is working on wearable device data, right? So the more you are into with the technology, the more you are skeptical of using that technology. So personally, I haven't used ever, and maybe I won't be using in any time soon. So what I'm trying to tell here is that this project is about different things, but one of the important things which this project is looking at is to integrate the data from the wearable devices to the existing healthcare data. Because if you go to a private hospital in India, the reason I'm saying private hospital, because in private hospital in India, you mostly have electronic health record if you're visiting the same hospital again and again. In the UK, we have something different. We do have private hospitals, but we don't go normally there. We have National Health Service, we call that as NHS. Now, NHS is a countrywide, across the UK, it's a National Health Service which has got collection of the data, the healthcare data, irrespective of where you live within the UK. So even if we go to the doctor in Cardiff, the information which they store can be accessed in Edinburgh or in Sheffield because it's a centralized database. The reason they have this electronic health record, I don't need to explain why it is important. It's good to have the historical record. I'm sure that eventually countries like India would also move to that direction to have the repository. As Professor Khan said, if in India we can have a repository for storing the documents, why can't we have a repository for storing the health record, right? So it's just a matter of time. But in short, this project is about looking at the fact that how we can make best use of the wearable device data, because the data you are collecting from the wearable devices, that mostly goes like looking at your app and saying that I have walked like 5 miles in a day, this is my heart rate and so on, and you just forget. But this is a very dynamic thing, right? And the reason it becomes interesting is because the variables which are being shown on a wearable devices, such as heart rate, mean arterial pressure, blood pressure, systolic, diastolic, and so on, that indicate a lot of things which are happening in your body, in a human body, that indicates many potential things which can happen to you. So who is going to make best analysis of that data? Are you smart enough to do that? If you are a medical professional, then maybe yes. But if not, then Dr. Google doesn't work. You understand what is Dr. Google, that if you get some symptom, you go and start looking at Google, and Google will advise you all the possible diseases which you can have. So you don't want to get into that territory, right? So how best you can make the use of those wearable devices data? So this project is about doing some experiments with the wearable devices where this PhD student would collect the data and would try to integrate that with the electronic health record data, which is, as I said, is a centralized data in the UK. But there is a problem, and I'm not sure if you might have guessed what the problem is, that this data, the EHR data, is static at least until the next medical appointment. Do you understand what does that mean? May you?
If you proceed the next medical day or the appointment,
Yeah,
the records are going to be constant, static,
exactly. But our body is a dynamic system,
keeps changing.
right? You know what is a dynamic system? My PhD is in nonlinear dynamical systems, so I often have this habit of bringing this dynamic system and non-dynamic system in every discussion I do, because that's my PhD, right? So, but it's important, that's why I have to do it. Healthcare, I mean, human body is a very dynamic system. It's a very complex system. You deal with complexities, and hence static data, although that is going to give some insight about what is your state of health, but what if you could augment that with a time series data which is perhaps generated every second, right? So if you go and hopefully no one has to go through that situation, but let's say someone goes to an ICU, what happens usually is that they are monitoring the blood pressure and heart rate every second or every microsecond maybe, depending on what kind of instruments they're using. We are getting those data every day if we are wearing those devices. Can we integrate that to the EHR? Now, this is one problem. So the recent advancement and popularity of the wearable devices have caused immense collection of healthcare data, but these are some of the problems which are associated. And don't worry if you think I'm kind of being distracted from the core agenda of the session. No, there is a third point, and I'll again switch back to my implementation of AI thing. But the reason I have got this slide is to give you some more context of what different issues you can have, what different research question you can think of when we are talking about the wearable devices. The number one is the integration of the wearable data into static electronic health record. Who is a student of electronics in this meeting room? Can you raise your hand? Excellent. We all know about sampling, right? Sampling frequency. You have a signal, let's say continuous signal. How do you use that signal in a digital format? You first do the sampling, you sample at an interval. What should be the sampling frequency? Can anyone tell me what's the optimal? So there are ways to do the sampling, and the reason we do the sampling is because we don't want to lose the information. We want to retrieve, as much information as we can when we are using that signal in a digital devices. Because to pass the signal into a digital device, you first need to convert from analog to digital, right? I'm a data scientist, but I have my background, including my Master of Science, is in advanced control systems. So I'm a control systems engineer at the heart. So I love to connect data with the signal processing. Okay, and if you attend tomorrow's session, you can hear more on that, because that's my research. That's the session where I'll be presenting my research, and you'll see how we can integrate these two things together. But anyways, again, I'm coming back to the core agenda of the session. So the first one is the integration of the wearable data into the static electronic health record data. And this is not that simple as it sounds. Because if something is static, how would you all of a sudden come and integrate something which is changing every second? Just imagine how difficult and how complicated this could be. So that's one research question which that candidate is looking after, and hopefully he'll come up with some good solution of that. The next one is, obviously this is not my cup of tea, but again, very much relevant. Security and the reliability of the data. Because when we are talking about healthcare data, personal data, that's a sensitive data, right? You can't compromise on the security aspect. How are you going to ensure the security? There are certain technologies which I'm sure you must have heard, such as blockchain and technology, which can help you to have that secured storage of the data. But again, I'm not touching that nerve at this point. My interest is in this third one, which is the advanced data analytics. Now, this is pretty much a machine learning and artificial intelligence problem, right? Now, how can we, I mean, now, if you have kind of lost the plot, what I was trying to tell before coming to this case study, this example is about showing you how artificial intelligence can be used to augment the quality of the research. This is, or help in a research process. This is not an example of how good you can make or how smart data analytics you can do. Just to clarify, even though I have mentioned this as a third point, have you heard this term before, synthetic data? You can raise your hand if you have. Synthetic, at least you must have heard the word synthetic, right? Which is not natural, right? Synthetic, I think in the garment section you call synthetic cotton, terry cotton, that kind of things, right? So it's synthetic is something which is not natural. Now, those of you who are working with training neural network, is there anyone in this room who has worked with training of the neural network? Data used to train the neural network, deep learning model? No. Most of the AI models that we have been talking, irrespective of the area of application, that requires training with the data, right? That we all agree, right? There is no confusion in that. We all need the training data to train the model. Where do we get the training data from? The training data we can get from the various ways we collect the data, like the sensor systems, the way we measure the data. Sometimes you can also collect the data based on some interviews and something. But in this case, if you are trying to use that healthcare data to train a model, this room for 2 hours, because if you do that, it will get compromised. So likewise, when you are using those confidential data, healthcare data coming from the wearable devices for training the model, for training the deep neural network, in a way you are again compromising with the quality of the data, the security of the data, right? So there is another technique, and you can do some more research on that. This is not teaching session, you're not my students, so I won't take too long. You can do your own research if you want. In these kind of situations, we often come up with a solution that we create a synthetic data out of the main data. So it's like, I'm sure someone was from cryptography or someone was talking about cryptography today morning when the session was going on. You were talking about. So it's like masking the actual information, right? So you have got the confidential data, the sensitive data, and you do some sort of coating on top of that so that the actual information get masked, but it doesn't lose the dynamic characteristic which it should. Does that make sense? So, for example, if I am standing here in front of you and the way I am communicating, this is also a data. So you can, if you are hearing my audio and if you're watching me, you can, based on this data, you can make some judgment about me, like what kind of person I am. It's because the data reveals what is inside me. And likewise, when we are using the synthetic data, we have to make sure that that data is again representative of the main data, and it's not synthetic in its sense that it's rubbish. We don't want garbage in and garbage out. This term is often used in AI model that if you don't know what your data is, you might end up putting some garbage in and garbage out without getting any meaningful information out of that. So synthetic data generation in itself is a huge task. It's not that simple as you might be thinking. It's not a cryptography. I'm sorry, sir. The reason I brought that example was to make it easy for understand, make it easy to understand. But in reality, it doesn't work that way. So what we need to do, we need to again start thinking of some generative model which can generate the data for you. Again, going back to my classic question, raise your hand if you have used ChatGPT. No, that's a generative model that generates the information, as this gentleman rightly said. Now, what happens that you can use similar kind of model, not ChatGPT, but there are some ways to generate the synthetic data if you provide them the real data, and that way you can mitigate those issues with the sensitive data. That's one thing. But this could again be of two types. One is either you can have partial synthetic data where you just encapsulate the sensitive part and go with the, you know, the thing which you think is okay to go with. And the other one is 100% synthetic data where you just come up with a new version which is functional, which does the job for you, which can be used for training the model, which can be used for deriving some smart decision support system, but is not using your original data, right? So this person, this gentleman who is my PhD student, is actually using, as I said, he's working with the variable data, but because of the ethical concerns, he can't go with those data. So his plan, in fact, if I'm not incorrect, he has already generated some data. He has started working on the synthetic data to train the model, and eventually he will come up with some smart model to do the forecasting. So if you take a note, there are two different types of AI application I mentioned. One AI application here is to generate the data out of the sensitive data, and the other AI application is to use that synthetic data to generate an AI model. These are two different things, but they're again using artificial intelligence. Did I confuse you? Was that okay to understand? For the students, was that okay to understand? Or did I confuse you? So I explained what is fully versus partial synthetic data. I don't need to go and again spend time on that. There is another thing which he's doing. Like ChatGPT, there is something called Time GPT. Have you heard about this? Time GPT? Have you heard about that? No. The reason you haven't heard about Time GPT is because it doesn't give you the direct answer for your assignment. Otherwise, you might have heard about that. What it does, on the other hand, is that, do you know what is a time series data? Students, do you know what is a time series data? A data having timestamp. So for example, the weather, today's humidity in Mangaluru, there is a humidity for every second, right? It's not the same, it's changing. And it will keep changing and keep, irrespective of whether you record or not, there will always be humidity and temperature for this city. That's the time series data. Understood? Heart rate coming from the wearable devices, that's the time series data. Blood pressure coming from the wearable devices, Apple Watch, that's the time series data. Okay? So Time GPT is again something analogous to ChatGPT, but the main use of Time GPT is to forecast, to fit a time series data to a model without actually doing the fitting yourself. So if you go and try to fit a time series data to a model, you could go for some regression model, some LSTM model, long short-term memory. LSTM is a type of neural network. But if you want to do that, you have to do some effort. You have to go and write a Python script, 3, 4, 5 lines of code. The model would run, the model would get trained, and then you get a trained model which can be used to do the forecasting based on the time series data. The forecasting could be something such as, what's going to be the energy demand in the city of Mangaluru on 5th of May? Okay, this is a question. Every day there is a demand for electricity in the city of Mangaluru. This is the time series data again. If you use this data, if you get access to this data from some sources, you can get that model which can predict what's going to be the uses of, what's going to be the demand of electricity or energy on May 5th, and that can help energy company to do the planning. That's one example, but there could be numerous other examples that you can think of. Now this approach, as I said, requires you to first think what time series model you are going to use. On the other hand, this Time GPT is like, again, an easy way out. You just get your data, throw it in time GPT chat sort of thing, and you get the fitting, you get the model fitting. Now, is that going to serve every purpose? At least for this project, no. But the reason this candidate is using time GPT is because it helps you to narrow down the scope of the data, because not every time series data would be useful or applicable for the fitting. So to make an assessment whether or not a data is worth proceeding, this approach can be used, which provides you some guidance. And if you think that this data is worth exploring, it has got some good correlation and so on, you can then try out the model you actually want to use. So that will save your time. Okay, so this is again example of how artificial intelligence can be used in educational setting. Obviously, this is for the research and innovation thing, but the research is also part of education, isn't it? So far what I have done, I have given 3 examples. One is generating the synthetic data. The other one is that how that data can be used to derive the AI model. And the third one is this time GPT. Last but not the least, just one slide. We are going to wrap up after this, okay? This is about another project. Now, as this session is being recorded and live streamed, I cannot talk into too much of detail about this project for the confidentiality reason. This is about wargaming simulation. One of my PhD student, in fact, he's a professional doctorate candidate. He's working on some kind of designing a wargaming simulation platform for certain country. I can't name the country, I can't name the organization. But yes, wargaming is, as if you do some quick Google, you'll find what kind of thing you can do with the wargaming. It's like a game. It's a game where you simulate the scenarios that if there is a war-like situation with your infrastructure, with your strength of military personnel and so on, how much you have a chances of winning certain war for the gaming purposes as well. I mean, we have this kind of board game and so many video games, right? So think in that sense, okay? So this is a project about developing the wargaming simulations, and to do that, they need to again use the data, right, to come up with the model which can do the simulation. And as this is associated with a very high confidential organization, so they don't have access to the real data, even though they have access, but they can't use it for their PhD. Again, in this kind of situation, AI generated data is a good example, where they can come up with some dummy data, some synthetic data, and that can serve the purpose without compromising the guideline or the regulations of the organization where they come from. Okay? Now don't start guessing which organization I'm referring. I won't say any single word. This is being recorded, this is being streamed. But this use case is not just for that scenario, it can also be used for gaming purposes, okay? That's all. I mean, I started with some examples, some benefits, some drawbacks, some risks, some challenges. Then I came up with some practical examples of how artificial intelligence can be used in educational settings. Now let me start concluding my session. It won't take long, trust me. What we need to do, I mean, everyone would agree here that we need to have a proper ethical guidelines and the policies. We need to have continuous assessment and monitoring, because it's a very evolving field, right? Artificial intelligence, the way you see in 2024, that's gonna change in 2030. You can't have one static policy document which is going to be relevant forever. So this is why you need to have this continuous monitoring and evaluation. And the third one is stakeholder engagement. Who are the stakeholder in educational settings? Students, staff members, admin staff, IT support team, everyone is stakeholder. To an extent, visitor like us. If we are coming to your university, we also want to stay safe and secure in whatever we are doing here. So there could be many stakeholders, and that you need to keep in mind. We need to stick to the best practices as much as we can. I'm not saying that we are, I mean, as an organization, we we don't want to evolve. We are also trying to look for the best practices, but these are some of the best practices which we can think of: data governance, transparency in the algorithm which we are using. Because if you are not transparent, if you don't tell the stakeholder what kind of tool you are actually using, that again is not an ethical way of doing this stuff. And then the final one is the education and the awareness. Okay, that's again very important. Now, I came to the end of my session. I'm not sure if you enjoyed this or not, but what I'm sure is that we had some robust discussion around the various phases of artificial intelligence. Some signposting, obviously. I mean, as I said, in 1 and 2 hours, nobody can come up with everything about a topic, okay? So what I was doing, I was trying to come up with some existing practices, some benefits, some issues, with some, obviously, some examples, some case studies, but floor is open for you to discuss, to comment, to ask questions, to educate me if you think you have a better idea. I'm happy for the suggestions and the questions and the comments. Thank you. Thank you so much. Yes. Yeah.
How authentic is the data?
We don't know. And we don't know because we haven't developed that system. And this is why transparency is so important. Now, as personally, I haven't digged into the source code or something because it's an open source. So they must have shared some kind of source code, like how they are doing. Personally, I haven't digged into that, so I can't comment on the level of accuracy and security and so on. But the kind of acceptance ChatGPT has got in the past, a few years, I'm not against it. Okay, let me be very honest. What I'm suggesting is that, like, and again, I might be repeating myself, we have to be careful about how we are using a tool. We cannot depend on ChatGPT for solving our assignment, but yes, we can get some initial direction, like if we, for instance, that goes with the Wikipedia, right? In research, we normally don't depend on Wikipedia as a source. If some students cite Wikipedia, we penalize them for doing that. We say, no, Wikipedia is not the authentic source of citing, just because everyone can go and populate the Wikipedia. But let's say if you are trying to find some information at the very basic level, such as what is eigenvalue, or what is the matrix and etc., it's not that bad. I mean, you can get those basic information from Wikipedia, and that will signpost you to some of the resources which you can go and refer. So I think ChatGPT, if that's a question, I think we don't have to oppose that. We just have to be careful how we are using that. It could be used, yes. Sorry. Yeah, that's another caveat, but
So we don't get the latest preferences from
But if you try
Right.
Google one, but that is real data, it's trained
Yeah.
on the current data, so you can get the real data.
So as ChatGPT became popular, because I think that was the first time people heard that something like this is there, but it's not the only option. That's not the only AI tool generative model that you can find in the market. As rightly said by by Chami, that yes, you can go and find a better option as well if you want. But yes, I'm quite sure that even, if they have to compete, if they have to survive, they would have a mechanism of doing some adaptive learning eventually, if not now.
And can we not do away with this? We do not want all such things. Because creativity of the student is lost, hard working ability is lost. Like say, for example, when I was a student, I used to go to library, refer some 2-3 books,
Yep.
read, and then make my own notes.
Right?
Like what ChatGPT is doing now, I used to do it on my own.
Yeah.
But I think the humans will adapt to it. They will try to advance beyond this technology as well at one point. So they will go beyond ChatGPT can do. So that's I think because we are so much used to AI support now. We have
Creativity is,
Yeah.
the kids also, when they have to write some essay and all, and vocabulary, recording, all that stuff.
I think even musicians are complaining now, isn't it? So the
In somebody's voice, anybody can sing.
So I think the best way to deal with this is to first of all understand that any technology takes some time to get mature. Now, I came up with an example of Google search engine, for example, right? So when Google search engine came, if not exactly, but similar kind of, things were going at that time as well, that this is something where you don't have to put any effort, you just go to the Google and find the answer. But now I think in 2024, after about 25 years of emerging of that technology, we have been mature enough, we know how to use Google, right? So it takes some time. It is still very immature to say that, obviously I do agree with what you said. In fact, that those were the points which I also covered in my presentation, creativity and the research skill and so on. But I think eventually we'll come to a stage where we would know how to use and how much to use. Because nothing can replace the textbook, nothing can replace the peer-reviewed journals and the papers, right? That all, since I am very active in data science teaching and pedagogy, I know I've seen in my students, they sometimes depend a lot on the blogs. For instance, there is something called medium.com towards datascience.com. If, let's say, I ask them to do an assignment on clustering technique, they would go and read a blog on towards datascience.com and they would find an answer as well, which could be okay for a simple kind of clustering, but that cannot replace the peer-reviewed work which people can go and find about clustering, regression, classification, or anything for that matter, right? So that's, it's something similar to saying that, information is there, but you need to have that with a pinch of salt. You need to understand how much to absorb and how much to just discard, So I think that's the balance we need to think of.
When we write an article,
Right.
when we write an essay, we are supposed to give references. So that we can't expect ChatGPT.
Exactly, yeah. And I'm sure,
It is not giving a list of references.
yeah.
Only giving the material.
I'm sure if you have submitted any paper in the recent time to any international journal, they have started coming up with a tick box where you have to confirm that this manuscript has not been produced with any AI tool. If yes, then you have to include them as an author, right? Which again doesn't make sense. You can't have ChatGPT as the first author or for that matter, middle author as well, right? So they have started coming up with these kind of things to make people aware that, if you are producing that kind of work which will go in a peer review and which will stay forever, you should be honest. You can't have ChatGPT as one of your co-author.
And Java project is right time to be
Right.
produce responsible AI technology. So
Yeah,
I think we are in the right stage, so we can continue this work.
right. Any other thoughts, comments, questions, suggestions?
So what are the AI tools which are presently used in UK higher education, other than ChatGPT, whether they're exclusively using any other?
Such as Time GPT, I said. Time GPT has got a very nice traction in the recent years, and you can find numerous tools. I don't even remember those tools. It's pointless, right? You can't. We shouldn't be, focused on knowing the names of the tool because there are numerous. It is accepted, but again, if I summarize my discussion, it is accepted, but to a certain degree. If someone is producing the entire assignment using ChatGPT, then no, it's a no. And we have started finding ways to sort of mitigate those things. Like for Turnitin is useful to detect the similarity. Likewise, we have started finding ways to figure out whether the work has been generated by an AI tool or not. Before I end, I'll give you a very interesting thing. I'll share something very interesting. Both for the student and staff, this could be useful. If you generate anything with ChatGPT, whether it's an essay, whether it's a report, whatever, no matter how much you are trying to do the paraphrasing using another AI tool, if you just copy and paste that and put in the ChatGPT with quotation mark and say, did you write this? They would say yes, if it has been generated by ChatGPT. Okay? So students, should be more careful. And member of staff, you can thank me if you didn't know that there is a way.
Even our quality enhancement department, they suggest it's okay to use technology, but that's why should be meeting the visitors and the students. For example, we discussed about personalization. If you want to learn about content, you can ask each of the students on that, you get 10 pointers, and then have a discussion whether it is right or wrong, rather than just an accident. So they are in a way trying to adapt a method to learning for lessons. So if they are not, the co-pilot in Microsoft Teams. So you can go through your meeting, recording and produce a meeting. So it is recommended now. It's coming from Microsoft. Something behind that technology is that GPT. So I think there will be a situation we can't get away with these technologies. We need to find a way to deal with it.
And perhaps this is why, as Dr. Chaminda said, that we are in the very right time. We are going to think of such clusters, of such research cluster between our universities, where we can have multiple such discussions and forums to see what best practices we can have, how more responsible we can be with artificial intelligence. Any other thoughts, questions? Yes.
Difference between AI and open AI,
Oh.
and that is organization.
Yeah, that's rightly said. AI is a blanket term. AI, OpenAI is a part of AI, but not every AI is part of OpenAI. Okay. I think that's the best way to explain that.
In future, VRs are acquiring this education field.
Sorry.
Virtual reality are acquiring the education field.
Virtual reality, you mean? No, it's not about acquiring. VR is, again, a very popular technology which people are using for various purposes, especially if one of the examples of the virtual reality could be that you can use VR for training, training some maybe healthcare professional. So how do you train a doctor, a healthcare professional? You need hospital, you need ICU to train them, right? But you don't have that many hospitals. Even if you have, you can't train everyone at the same time. So what happens if we start creating a virtual environment of maybe an ICU, and with the VR headset and the programming, you can actually start doing some simulation how to work in an emergency scenario. I'm not saying that that would replace how people are being trained in person, but if that is done in addition to what people are doing as in-person training, then that would certainly enhance the efficiency of the training, and that would save a lot of time. So that's just one example. There could be numerous other things which you can think of VR. But again, this I thought is the best example to explain how this can be adapted in education. Okay. Any other question or thoughts? Sorry? I don't know really, because I don't use ChatGPT to that extent. But yes, I think so. Yeah.
So, use that data is different from a ChatGPT 3.5, whatever we have.
I'm unable to answer that question exactly, because, as I said, I haven't looked into how this ChatGPT 4, as you said, is being promised. But if they are offering you a premium services, I mean, just a common sense, then certainly they are adding some more values to what people would get free of cost. So my sense is that, my understanding is that they would those models would perhaps be more advanced in compared to what we get as the free of cost. Did I answer your question?
Yeah, I think yes, sir. But another thing, actually, ChatGPT is hampering the students, right?
Yeah.
Like, because they copy the program automatically, but they don't have a debugging skill also.
Right.
The code will have errors.
Yeah. So as an instructor, are you faculty, right? So as an instructor, it's our again responsibility to kind of find ways to start designing the task in a way that they have to show some sort of, as you said, debugging skill as well, or purposely design an exercise that if they copy 100% from ChatGPT, they can't they can't go to the next stage. So everything comes up with some challenges for instructor as well. We have to be more kind of innovative in terms of how we design the assignment. Okay, I know it's not that easy, but we can think in that direction, and I mean that's a work in progress. I'm not saying we have found a solution to that, or we have any silver bullet which can solve these problems, but yes, we have to move in that direction. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, so that's what I said, that maybe with a careful design of the assignment, you can have some exercises within the exercises which can, require them to go to that point. If they don't, they would struggle. Yeah, I think we need to work more in that direction. That's why I'm saying that perhaps we haven't reached that point, but we have to be more kind of strategic, more thoughtful while designing that kind of assignment. Okay? Anyone else? Or if it has dried up, then maybe I will wrap up. And tomorrow I'll be presenting anyways, but that will not be on responsible AI. That would be, you'll find, I'll try to explain my research interest and the kind of work we do within my research group within CardecMet. So I'll be talking about net zero and sustainability and how data-driven modeling can be used for designing the net zero systems for sustainability. So that's going to be the theme of my research. But if you are happy for now, then I can wrap up, and I'll see you tomorrow then. Okay? Thank you. Thank you so much.